Welcome to The Business of Family, the podcast where we explore the stories, challenges, and opportunities of family businesses. I'm your host, Tammy Buss, and I'm a family business survivor and also a family business advisor. In this show, we will be talking with family business leaders and experts to bring you insights and inspiration so you too can survive your family business journey. Whether you're a founder, a successor, a professional, or just curious about family businesses, this podcast is for you. So today, I actually have two guests again. I have Randy Carr, who's a second generation of World Emblem. He's the CEO and president. And they are the largest patch producers in the world with over 4,000 embroidery heads, 1 million square feet of manufacturing space, and 1,200 talented individuals across 5 countries spanning 8 locations. And they manufacture and deliver a remarkable 1 million emblems each day. And we also have JC Carr. He's the third generation involved in World Emblem. So welcome, Randy and JC.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'd like to start with very first question is, when was the family business started?
Yeah, so my father had a business that was manufacturing badges and labels and stuff in New Jersey. It went out of business in 1988. He restarted it in 1990 and pulled my brother and I out of school, and the three of us opened officially and incorporated in 1993, but we were doing this since 1990 in Medley, which is a suburb of Miami. Okay. So effectively 35 years ago.
Right. And how many family members today are currently involved in day-to-day operations?
Just the three of us. So JC, my brother, and myself.
Okay. And how about ownership? Is the ownership, is it same amount of owners, or how does the ownership structure
same
work?
as it was. Structure is still 50-50 between my brother and myself.
Okay.
Now there's some trust involved and stuff like that. So it's a little more, I would say a little more complex than that, only for estate planning and insulation and such. But the reality is 50-50.
Right. Yeah. When you start getting into estate planning and it becomes a little more complicated, but we just want to look at sort of, how it was started. So when your dad started the business, he started on his own?
Well, I think what the story, if I remember, he passed away 26 years ago. So, but the story was something like he was selling for a guy that was making emblems, and in lieu of commission, he sold the business. And then he ran it until the mid 80s, and then ran into some trouble, and the business folded. So,
and then wanted to get right back in it, out of the pot.
I don't know if
again,
frankly, I don't know if he had another choice. So it was one of those situations where, when his business went under, he was in the middle of a divorce, and sort of all the funding dried up. So it's one of those things like you either do this or you're living on the street kind of thing. I don't know if it was that bad, but it was pretty bad when I remember it.
Right. Well, you lived through it. So what was it like growing up in the business?
Again, it was a little different than what I see JC go through. So I'm careful to like not repeat some of the stuff that I saw. It's also a different time.
Right.
So I would say, we were going from a failed business to a startup, and it wasn't a real startup. It was like a super, like knee-jerk ghetto startup. So we went from that to where we are now. So it was difficult. It was complex. It was hard because you were doing everything and there was no training. So I did whatever I thought I had to do to get to the next sort of stage. And every day there were some days there was nothing to do because there was no business, no orders or anything. So
I mean, although you were second generation, it's almost like you were first generation founder of the business.
It'd be disingenuous to call myself that, but I mean, I was involved when it first opened. So yeah.
And how was your entry into the business been, JC?
I think obviously it's a little bit different. I graduated school from University of Alabama last May in 2024. So about a year and a half in. Obviously the company is a little different now. We're 1,200 people instead of 3. But I'm in my second rotation. I started off in continuous improvement, and now I'm in service department, but it's been great.
And so, Randy, you talked about some of the mistakes that were made earlier on that you don't want to make with JC or the next generation. Can you give us a couple of examples of of what that is or was?
Yeah. So probably the biggest one. Look, the business is way more structured right now. Uh, and after 35 years, you kind of know you have everyone's role and what their responsibility is in the business. But I think, just in terms of this podcast in general, it's the relationship I have with JC and Jamie, which is my brother.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The sort of understanding where my role as a father ends and as a CEO begins,
Mm-hmm.
and when I'm in charge and when I'm not in charge.
Right. What hat you're
So
wearing, right? Is it the dad hat?
it's complicated.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're home, and we're sitting there, and he's asking me questions about work, and I'm almost careful not to answer. Like a lot of times, I'm trying not to respond,
Right.
even though I want to, and then we might end up in an argument.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that was, when I was with my father, it wasn't an argument. There were fights.
Mm-hmm.
But we were also a different generation and different times. So,
Right.
and I just don't, you have to make that decision of what's more important. And like 1,000,000% my relationship with JC far outweighs my relationship in terms of being a CEO in the business. There's not even a question. So.
And JC, how do you distinguish the fact that, dad or Randy at the office and dad at home? How do you try to separate those?
It's impossible. As easy as it is to say. I think he brought up a good point. Like asking questions, I'll ask questions related to the business, only because I'm so new. And sometimes the question is also arising a problem between myself and maybe somebody else within the business. And his role as the CEO would be to jump in and try to resolve that issue. But as a father, I guess his role would be to advise me on what to do. But it's kind of like a slippery slope there.
Mm-hmm. Because what hat are you wearing? Are you wearing the business, working in the business hat that says, go to your supervisor, or your dad saying, hey, here's how you handle that guy or gal in the business?
Right. But what makes more sense for the business, him to solve the problem immediately, or him to advise me and then maybe it gets resolved. So it's difficult.
So when you started working with your brother, you said, your dad kind of hauled you into the new business. How did it actually work out that you had three of you in the business, and you have three now, but how did you divide the roles and responsibilities? And then how do you do that now?
I'm going to give you the most candid answer I can. It was a disaster. So yeah, it was, y'all are coming out of school and you're going to work or you're paying for school yourself. And it was, you're in charge of production, you're in charge of sales. And that was it. It was a mess, and it was a mess for a couple of years. Honestly, now that I look back, I don't know how we ever made through any of it. It was a complete disaster.
What, a business disaster or a family relationship disaster?
Yes to everything. So it was to everything, because my relationship with my father never recovered. So, there was never a line between work and family, and there was no definition of that. And, he was in a situation where he just didn't understand the separation between the two. And he was super smart, but that wasn't the issue. The issue was just that he didn't understand to draw that line.
Right.
Maybe he didn't have maybe that 35 years ago, there wasn't the internet, or there wasn't therapy the way there is, or just all the angles you can play to make sure you have a support structure around you. My support structure, not JC's.
Mm-hmm.
So, and just back to your question. So the first, it was just throw it at it. And then eventually the roles we ended up dropping into our individual roles in the business, where I became CEO and he took on a sales leadership role. And then finally he's like, man, I don't like this whole leadership thing. It stinks. And I was like, well, you don't have to do that. Like take a salary as an employee of the business, and gets paid like a sales rep. And then you're a shareholder, and take a distribution when we have money to take distributions, and no different than if you're a shareholder of a public company. So.
Yeah, I love that, because, we talk about that and teach that with our families, is really understanding the differences between an ownership role and a leadership role. So there's the business where you work at day-to-day operations, and then there's the ownership, which actually is the guide to how the business executes the vision of those owners. And then there's the family, right? So you get those three and they're all combined. So how are you changing what you did with Jamie, with JC, or, any other family member? So let me just back up a little bit. Is it just you and Jamie, or is there other siblings?
No, it's just me and Jamie.
So going forward with the next generation, does Jamie have children? And then how many children do you have?
I have two. Jamie has none. My other son is a little bit involved in the business, not like JC. And then to answer your additional question, the corporate structure is set up completely different. I have an executive team, and then we have a family board of directors. So family board of directors we'll be having our first meeting in April, and that's specifically set up to ensure there's the understanding of the difference between owning a business and operating in the business.
Right.
And that's just stuff that was never discussed with me. Like I had to figure that out. And so again, I'm fortunate to be in YPO, and I had people around me that kind of talk me through these things. And you learn as you go.
Yeah. Do you have outside advisors on your board as well, or is it just family?
I don't. No, just family.
Is it advisory or more fiduciary?
Fiduciary.
Good. And at what point, I'm assuming JC's on that board, or not yet? Yes. And what about your other child who's not in the business or slightly involved in the business?
So he does this kind of his own thing. He works at a retail store down locally, and he runs a small 3D printing business. So he's still a little younger. He's 20, so not involved yet. I don't know how involved he'll be. We'll see how that goes.
So what does the future look like then for World Emblem? Because you are their largest, I think, emblem patch manufacturer in the world, are you not?
We are.
So what does the future look like?
So just because we're the largest doesn't mean there's not an enormous amount of market share out there. So, our specific niche we're the largest manufacturer of badging, labels, and emblems. But there are plenty of other areas to go where people use direct apply for garment decoration, or they're importing garments that are already decorated, inventorying them. So there's a lot of places that we can disrupt markets. The decorated apparel markets is in the billions of dollars, like billions. So there's an endless amount of opportunity. It's almost a question of what to focus on, plus what to say no to. So
from a business perspective, because you're a family-owned company,
that's right.
It's like what does that look like going forward, and particularly for JC and his kids and future generations? What does that look like from a perspective of here's what we want to do. We want to not only maintain that market share, but go bigger for next generations. Or the idea is to grow and sell.
Definitely not growing and selling unless look, there's always a number, but that's not. Yeah, it's never been in
everything's
the plan.
For sale, right? For the right,
of course. Like, come drive by my house, throw me a number, I'm good. Like, my stuff will be packed, I'll be gone within an hour. So, but I want to answer. I want to say, when we do our planning, we're planning 3 years out. So we really can't see beyond that, especially how fast the world is moving right now with generative AI and everything else. So I'll tell you the areas that we're developing. We just brought on an organizational development manager. So what JC is a generation that we need to start developing up. What we're finding is we're now to this weird spot where my leadership team is strong, my frontline guys are strong, but everybody in the middle, they're struggling because we haven't formally developed them. So, we're now seeing that as a really big opportunity for us to develop people from JC's role, who's now in the sales department, with a proper formal development plan, and for him to be able to move into finance or technology or into some kind of leadership role. We just haven't had that. So
that takes time, right, to learn.
Well, number one, it's hard to do. And it's not something everyone does do, to have that structure. So, yeah.
And what about you, JC? You've been working through a few areas now. What is your sort of vision going forward?
Everything's changing, like Randy said. Today is the next year and a half. Continue with what we're doing. We have a lot of changes coming, which I'm excited for within the business. So I think that our next year will be busy.
To add to that,
sure.
He's 23, and he's very charismatic. So I didn't even want him in the sales department. Like, I wanted him to go through all the boring stuff first, because what's going to end up happening is he's going to latch on to customers' engagement and the dopamine hit that comes when you close a sale.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like he's naturally going to stay in sales, which I'm not happy about.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, like it'd be great to have a third generation run the business.
Mm-hmm.
But that has to be earned. It's not gifted.
Well, no, and also you have to have the right qualifications in
That's
order
right.
to do that. And it might not be for everybody. I have lots of family companies that
That's
have,
right.
non-family CEOs and non-family members running the company, but the family still owns it, right? And it's
The
that sort
purpose
of
of the
that
business is to
legacy.
make money. Like the
Yeah,
purpose of the
yeah,
business is to make money. Like all the other stuff aside, if it's not profitable, there is no business. So it's
right.
got to be growing and it's got to be profitable, and then it's got to grow people. And then there's the altruistic part, and then there's what it gives back to its clients and the employees and the community. But like
Mhm.
ultimately, if a business cannot maintain its profitability and proper status, it's not a business. It's a
No.
hobby, and
Yeah,
that's not what
yeah.
this is. That's not what
No.
this is.
So, you've been through a lot with your dad, dad's business and then restarting. What are you most proud of about the company's evolution, and your family's role in it?
Um, yeah, I have a lot of coaches that hit me on this question. So, um, let me so JC, you take that first, then I'm going to answer after you.
Yeah, I mean, from before I started working here till now, I thought like it's a different company. We sell emblems, but we're so quick to adapt to things. More specifically, my team, just because I work with them, we get stuff thrown at us every single day. Different problems, issues that arise. Um, for example, yesterday there was a shipping issue, and it's unique to us, and we've never been able to deal with it. We all hopped on a call and resolved it. Um, that to me is pretty impressive. I've worked at 3 other places before here, and none of which have been able to jump on issues that quick and work as a team.
That's great. Randy, you gonna jump in now?
Yeah. Oh man, this sounds so disingenuous, but like that we made it through like all the craziness that I just told you, and like to we're the point now where like there's so many things that are really that there's just so much like opportunity in front of us, regardless
Hmm.
of the fact that we have tariffs and a really weird economy and kind of all this stuff. We also have the opportunity with generative AI, this organizational development. I mean, developing the right people in a systematic approach can lead to many, many other things apart from
Hmm.
just making emblems, right?
Hmm.
When you're tapping into people that are in a systematic way, a systematic development plan. So
Hmm.
I think like just how really well organized and well run the company is. And that's not for me, that's for my group. But
Right.
but like the simplest thing is the fact that we're still kind of kicking.
Hmm. Hmm. You've
There's a
been
lot
through a
to be
lot,
said.
right?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, so is
absolutely.
everybody. Like you got
Yeah.
2008, you got 2000, you got the dot-com crash, you got the 2008 financial crisis, you got COVID. I mean,
Hmm.
there's always something.
Right. And one of the things I think is very unique with family businesses is with your board. Your board is what decides on sort of what the future looks like, right? They're the ones who say, do we want this a family business? What do we want the legacy to
Yeah.
be? How do we maintain that? And then it's the business's role to execute, what the family wants. So it's unique. And I think JC, you said it, quite nicely that you can jump on things and get it done quickly. And I think that's, as a result of being a family business, they're a little more nimble. There's not a lot of, layers and layers and layers of red tape to have to go through in order to make some decisions. So, from a succession standpoint, I know you've got Gen 3 is currently in here. What is the sort of the plan, the vision from a legacy standpoint? Is that something that you do want to maintain a family business?
The short answer is yes, but the truth is to the statement from earlier, like, I don't know.
Hmm.
But the short answer is yeah. I mean, there's no plans at all
Hmm.
to sell this company.
Yeah. And I mean, I think as you mentioned it, anything's for sale, depending if something comes along.
Of
But and
course,
and your
like,
generation is Gen 3 is still fairly young.
yep.
And you're still young. So you got a long runway yet before you're ready to walk away. But tell me a little bit about, you know, the influence that your dad had on you in terms of how you're running the business or what you're doing differently to not run into the same problems that he had.
All right, so he was super impulsive,
Hmm.
and I would say emotional. So those are the two. Those are probably the two biggest things. Creating some space like a Stephen Covey kind of between stimulus and response. There's that space, and in that space, you get to make a choice, and that to me is a huge thing. Learning how to use data to make decisions, slowing down to speed up, those kinds of things. Again, I have the most respect for him. Without him, I wouldn't be here. And his ability to speak to clients was like nothing I've ever seen. And JC has that same gift. I don't have that gift, but I'm self-aware enough to understand what I didn't like that I saw. And in that space was the reaction. Was my relationship with him got caught up in that. So,
Right.
like I said to you, like in the outset, the most important thing is that I understand who I am, and JC understands who he is, or he is, when we're talking about work, and when we're home, because it's so JC still lives at home, and we're just two different people. At work, I am who I am, and he is who he is, and at home, he's my kid.
Yeah.
And we still watch football games and hang out together and all that kind of stuff. Thank God. So
You did mention YPO, and tell me a little bit about why you joined YPO, because I think that's important for other family members to know that there's help out there, whether it's through a family business organization or coaching, mentoring, peers, and is that something that you would want JC to also get involved in? Like what? Tell me a little bit about your YPO experience.
yeah, and the simple answer is I almost ran the company out of business by making some bad decisions. And what I found myself doing, and this was probably in 2008, after the financial crisis, I ended up going back to what I would call my executive team and commiserating with them about my decisions. And the reality is these people aren't my friends. They work for the business. So like I broke that sacred tenet where you can't complain to your staff about what's going on in the company.
No.
You can talk to them about strategy, but I had a personal issue we had a personal issue in my family. And at the time I was like, I got to sell this business. I can't work anymore. PE guy comes in, he says, you got a great business, but you're running it like shit. You got to do this. So, you got to do this. And he introduced me to YPO. I went to YPO Miami, and I had the worst case of imposter syndrome, and it took me 3 years. No, I'm not. I sat in my car for 2 hours, wouldn't even get out of my car and walk into an event. That's why I'm saying JC doesn't have this. I had it. So and it finally took me till about 2012 till I was like, you know what, I'm going to fix this problem. So, then you end up becoming who you surround yourself with. And then I got into Forum, and if you don't know, Forum is like this super deep relationships. It's moderator-led meetings with a group of individuals that are from YPO that for 4 or 5 hours a month, where you become very extremely vulnerable and you follow certain tenets. And I've been with my Forum for 13 years now, and it's completely changed my life. Yeah, it's. I'd argue like there's 2 or 3 moments where you make decisions in a business, and I would say that was like a top 5 decision. And at the time, I was kicking and screaming. This is crazy. What a waste of time. I don't know the value in this, but it's not until 5 years later you turn around and you're like, oh my goodness, like I wouldn't have been able to do any of this without these people.
Well, I think that's a lesson to be learned by, for most family businesses or just entrepreneurs in general, is to surround yourself and get the help. I went to Strategic Coach, and that was a game changer for me many years ago. And using myself as a family business advisor to say, what don't I know? Because we don't know what we don't know. And when you start to surround your people with other than your employees, because you need to have peers you want to be the small fish in the big pond, right? Instead of the big fish in the small pond. And you learn and you just absorb. And JC, you're in a great position to be able to learn and absorb this information from not only your group you're involved in, but also from your dad and your uncle. So great positioning and early on.
I agree.
Anyway, believe it or not, we're running out of time. And so I always like to end each episode with giving me 3 pieces of advice that you would give to another family business.
I think the biggest thing is just talk about how you're feeling. Even when I'm upset about something, I'll still bring it up, and we'll try to have a mature conversation about it.
They're spirited.
Spirited, good word.
50-50, yeah. That's the biggest one for me. Other than that, yeah, I mean I guess that might be like the theme of the month, is just like talking about issues I'm having, about the issues that the company's having, how to address them, how to figure it out, work as a team. I think we're kind of learning this together too. Just as the company grows, it's rapidly evolving and changing. And to my knowledge, it's unique to the past 10, 20, 30 years of the business.
Well, I have a couple. So I'll give you the first one is, I'll say the same thing as what I always say is to find a mentor. So like for JC's case, and I would say even my case, but I already have like between my forum, I have executive coach, I have coaches for my senior leaders that I lean on. So I have a whole bunch of people that I have my own psychologist. So I have a whole bunch of places that I go with the stuff that JC just said. Mm-hmm. So you need to have you need to have somewhere to go with that information. And if you're going to commiserate with people that have some skin in your game, you're not going to, I don't know if you're going to get a really genuine response.
No, I think you're right.
So I think like the first one is to find a mentor or support group. And even if you're not in crisis, you're going to be at some point in your life. So you got to have that. You got to have that support structure built up. So
you got business, ownership, and family. There's going to be something that comes up on one of those.
It happens all the time. And I still meet with my psychologist every other week, and I tell everybody, tell everyone, I'm happy to pay for it. Like I'm in an airport in the middle of Charlotte, and I'm doing it. Like you got to take care of these things. So, mm-hmm. And the second thing I would say is, and for JC's age, is to be curious, like insatiably curious, and whatever you're filling your brain with. In JC's case, it's probably it needs to be about generative AI and AI in general, because in 2 years from now or 3 years from now, the world's going to be markedly different than it is today. So, and the third thing is to have a voice. The one thing with JC is if he's doing his job, he can't be fired. Mm-hmm. But he sees things that don't seem right, and he's not sure where to go with it. He has a voice, and to use his voice, mm-hmm. And he can make a difference here, even at 23. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So, and the most important thing is to you had to enjoy this. Yeah. Enjoy the fact that you're in a unique business with unique people, and they're all really talented. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's great. Anything else to add, JC?
No, I think the last part, the voice, it's definitely been a struggle for me a little bit, trying to get better. And I think that falls back to his first point about getting a mentor. Also working on that. Think I have one that we're going to start next year. But yeah, I think just constantly learning and trying to do the best that I can do every single day.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It was a pleasure to have you.
It was fun to be here. Thank you.
Great. Thanks. Take care. If you like this episode, subscribe to the Business of Family podcast on your favorite listening platform. You can also find BlueRoots on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. On the next show, I'll be back with another amazing guest who will inspire you with their family business insights. Until then, take care and keep it in the family. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, tax, investment, or insurance advice. Before acting on any advice, please contact your personal or company advisors.